Welcome, everyone. Today, we'll dive into the fascinating world of the Minimax algorithm and explore how it helps make optimal decisions in two-player games. Anytime you play a game against a strong computer opponent, there is a hidden guarantee. If the game is simple enough, the computer can play so well that you can never beat it. Today, we are going to uncover the core idea behind that guarantee, a strategy called Minimax that gives optimal play in many two-player games. We will build it from very familiar ideas like turns in a game and simple recursion, nothing more exotic than that. Our path will be: first, connect to your experience playing against game AI, then turn games into trees, then define Minimax values, and finally see how this shows up in coding interview problems.
So by the end of this, I should be able to explain how a tic-tac-toe AI thinks and also recognize Minimax-style questions in interviews?
Exactly, and you will see that the same picture explains both unbeatable tic-tac-toe and problems like predict the winner or stone game. First, remember that in any turn-based game, a single move is really a choice among many possible futures. From earlier algorithm work, you may know that greedy choices can backfire when someone is actively working against you.
Right, like if I just grab the biggest pile now, I might open up an even better move for my opponent later.
Today we fix that by looking at Minimax, which is designed exactly for two-player zero-sum games where your opponent is trying to hurt you. We will turn games into trees, define Minimax values on those trees, apply it to tic-tac-toe, and then connect the pattern to common interview problems.
I like having that map. I am especially curious about the connection to problems like stone game.
Let us start with something familiar: why you can never beat a perfect tic-tac-toe AI. Think about playing tic-tac-toe on your phone and never managing to win against the hardest difficulty.
Yeah, it always feels like the AI just knows the right reply no matter what I try.
A perfect tic-tac-toe AI simply imagines every possible way the game could continue from the current board. It is pessimistic. It assumes that you will always reply with your best possible move, not a mistake.
So it plans as if I am also a perfect player even if I am not?
Then it marks which moves guarantee at least a draw no matter how well you respond, and never plays anything worse. That strategy of exhaustively searching the game and planning against a perfect opponent is exactly what we call Minimax.
So it is not guessing or learning from me, it is just logically ruling out all losing futures?
To formalize that idea, we need a picture where all those possible futures live, and that picture is a game tree. Let us turn that vague idea of imagining futures into a concrete structure, a tree.
So each branching in the tree is like choosing a different move?
Each node in the tree represents a full game position, including which player is about to move. Each edge is a single legal move that takes you from one position to another, from parent node to child node. The root of the tree is the position you are currently facing and trying to evaluate.
So the very top node is like the snapshot of the game right before I make a decision.
At the bottom, we have leaves, positions, where the game is over and we can clearly say win, loss, or draw. Once we see the game as this tree, the next question is how each player should behave while moving down it. In these games, two players alternate turns but care about the same score in opposite ways.
That is the zero-sum idea, right? What is good for one is bad for the other.
Mathematically, in a zero-sum game, whatever payoff max gets, min gets the exact opposite. We imagine one player called Max, whose goal is to make the shared score as large as possible. The opponent Min wants that same score to be as small as possible.
So we only track one number and each player is just pushing it in opposite directions.
Because of that, a gain of 1 point for Max is exactly a loss of 1 point for Min. To keep things simple, we will label finished positions with +1 if max wins, -1 if min wins, and 0 for a draw.
So everything is measured from Max's point of view, and Min just wants that number as low as possible.
Now we're ready for the core rule: how Max and Min should choose moves so that both play optimally. The key object in Minimax is the value of a state under perfect play by both sides. This definition says the value of a state is the maximum of its children if it is Max's turn, the minimum if it is Min's turn, or the leaf score if the game is over. We write V of S for the outcome you can guarantee from state S if both players play perfectly from now on. At a max node, we look at all children and take the one with the highest value because Max wants to maximize the score. At a min node, we do the opposite. We take the child with the lowest value because min wants to minimize the score.
So the recursion just alternates between Max and Min as we go down the tree until we hit a leaf with a fixed score.
To make these less abstract, let us walk through a tiny game tree and actually compute these values. Consider a very small game tree where we already know the leaf scores. At the top, we have a max node that branches into two children, each of which will be treated as a min node. On the left, the min node has two possible outcomes, 3 and 5.
Since that is Min's turn, they will act as if they can force the smaller value, which is 3.
On the right, the min node has leaf values 2 and 9.
Again, Min will pick the smaller value, so that child gets value 2.
Now, at the root, Max compares the left value 3 with the right value 2 and chooses 3, the larger one.
So the Minimax value of the root is 3, meaning Max can guarantee at least 3 if both sides play optimally.
That bottom-up process is exactly what a recursive Minimax function will compute for much larger trees. Now let us describe how you would actually compute these values in code using recursion. First, the base case. If the position is already a win, loss, or draw, we immediately return the corresponding score. If it is Max's turn, we recursively evaluate all child states and keep the maximum of their values. If it is Min's turn, we do the same but keep the minimum, because Min wants the score as low as possible.
So in code, this is just one function that calls itself flipping a boolean like isMax turn each time.
The return number is the minimax value of that state, which the parent will then use in its own max or min choice. With that structure in mind, we can plug in a concrete game like Tic-Tac-Toe and see how the pieces fit. Let us map the abstract pieces of Minimax onto the familiar game of Tic-Tac-Toe. The state can be represented by the 3x3 grid together with a flag saying whether it is X or O to move. A position is terminal if X has 3 in a row, or O has 3 in a row, or all 9 cells are filled with no winner. We can choose Max to be X, so a win for X is +1, a win for O is -1, and a draw is 0.
That matches the earlier idea of measuring everything from Max's perspective.
If both sides use Minimax in Tic-Tac-Toe, the starting position has value 0, meaning the game should always end in a draw.
So that is why the phone AI is unbeatable. It is just following the Minimax recommendations from that root value of 0.
Tic-Tac-Toe is small enough to fully solve this way, but bigger games quickly become too large to search completely. Minimax is conceptually simple, but its brute force nature can be very expensive. If B is the average number of legal moves, and D is how many moves ahead the game can go, then the work grows on the order of B to the power D. The branching factor B is roughly how many moves you can choose from at each turn. The depth D is how many moves remain before the game must end if both players keep playing. Because every level multiplies by about B, the number of nodes grows like B to the power D, which is exponential.
That explains why brute force is fine for tic-tac-toe but hopeless for huge games like chess.
Tic-Tac-Toe has only hundreds of thousands of positions, but chess and Go have numbers so large they are effectively impossible to fully search. In practice, we combine Minimax with smarter pruning and heuristics, but before that, we need one more ingredient: turning values into concrete moves. So far, Minimax tells us the value of a position, but in a game, we also need to choose an actual move. Conceptually, we start the root and loop over every legal move we could make. For each candidate move, we apply it to get the child state and run Minimax on that child.
So the child value tells me, assuming both of us play optimally from there, how good that move really is.
We then keep track of the move that gives the best value, maximum, if it is max's turn, minimum if it is min's turn. Finally, we return the best move, and its minimax value tells us the guaranteed outcome if everyone plays perfectly afterward.
So the AI is not just making a good-looking move, it is picking the move whose entire future tree is most favorable.
This pattern of evaluating and then choosing among actions shows up directly in many game-style interview questions. Let us look at Stone Game, a LeetCode problem that secretly uses Minimax ideas. Here, f of ij represents the net score advantage. The current player can guarantee from piles I through j, assuming optimal play. The recurrence says you can take the left pile and then your opponent gets f of I plus 1j, or take the right pile and your opponent gets f of ij minus 1, and you choose the better of those two options. The game starts with piles of stones in an array, each with a certain number of stones. At any point, the remaining game is just an interval from index I to index j.
So the state is smaller than a full board, we only need the left and right pointers.
The current player can take the leftmost or rightmost pile, trying to maximize their final stone advantage. Because the same interval can arise in many ways, we memorize f of ij, turning naive Minimax into efficient dynamic programming.
So when LeetCode asks if the first player wins, it is really asking whether this f value from the full interval is positive.
Many other problems, like predict the winner, follow this same pattern of intervals, choices, and memoized Minimax. Stepping back Minimax is really about what outcomes are guaranteed if nobody makes a mistake. In Tic-Tac-Toe, the starting position has value 0, so perfect play leads to a draw no matter what. In many impartial games, some starting positions are winning for the first player and others for the second.
So a positive Minimax value means the current player can force a win, and a negative one means they are doomed if the opponent plays perfectly.
The Minimax value at the root position tells you exactly what outcome is guaranteed under optimal play: win, draw, or loss. For enormous games like chess, we cannot fully compute the Minimax value of the starting position, so we use approximations and heuristics instead. In interviews, questions often phrase this as, "Can the first player guarantee a win?" which is exactly a question about that root value. Let us distill a general pattern you can use when a problem asks whether the first player can win. We define a Boolean function f of s that is true exactly when there is some move to a state where the opponent loses. Instead of numeric scores, we can work with a function f that just says whether the current player can force a win from state s. The key rule is that you are winning if you have at least one move that makes the opponent face a losing position.
That matches how I think in games. I look for a move that leaves my opponent with no good replies.
To avoid recomputing the same state over and over, we store f of s in a dictionary or array the first time we compute it. Often, state s is captured by which positions or numbers have been used, and a bit mask is a compact way to represent and cache that.
So problems like "can I win" are basically asking whether f of start state is true, computed with this memoized Minimax.
If you can recognize this pattern in an interview, you can quickly explain your plan in terms of game trees and recursive winning states. Let us pull together the main ideas so you can see the whole Minimax story at a glance. First, we turn a game into a tree of states and moves so that we could reason about all possible futures. Then, we label levels as max or min, with each player trying to push the shared score in opposite directions. We gave each terminal state a simple score like +1, 0, or -1, and used max and min choices to bubble those values up the tree. Under those conditions, Minimax play is provably optimal. It tells you the best you can guarantee if both sides play perfectly.
That is a powerful guarantee. I am not just playing well, I am playing as well as mathematically possible for that model.
Because naive Minimax is exponential, we will next look at alpha, beta pruning, and heuristics that make these ideas practical for larger games. Before we finish, let us do a quick practice question to check that you can run Minimax on a tiny tree yourself. Let us close with one small computation and one big picture question. For the practice tree, the left min node chooses between 1 and 4, so it takes 1. The right min node chooses between 2 and 3, so it takes 2. At the root, Max compares those child values 1 and 2 and chooses 2, so the Minimax value at the root is 2.
So even though there was a leaf with value 4, the opponent could always steer away from it, and Minimax correctly ignores that tempting but unrealistic outcome.
For reflection, think about how planning against a perfect opponent forces you to guard against the worst reasonable responses instead of hoping for mistakes.
It means if my plan still works, even when the opponent plays perfectly, then in real life where people sometimes blunder, my position is even safer.
If you can comfortably do that tiny Minimax and explain why we assume a perfect opponent, you are ready for alpha-beta pruning and for spotting Minimax in interview problems. Thanks for watching this. Subscribe to Thinking in Math channel for this and other interesting math topics. And we always welcome your feedbacks. Leave your questions and suggestions in the comments.